All right, guys, let's take a look at the new release from Breitling. This is the new 42mm Superocean. There are other sizes, other colorways. This is the one I get first look at from Richard at Saltzman's in Rhode Island. Link in the description. Couldn't do it without you guys over there at Saltzman's. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the rest of the channel does as well. So check them out if you're in the area, or if you just want a good deal on some good authorized dealer watches. They will ship them pretty much anywhere. Just get a hold of them, tell them I sent you. Let's take a look at this guy, and let's just break it down from what the watch is, and then we can then talk about what it isn't and what has changed, and just a few little things like that. But let's get right to it. So I measure the case at 42mm. So that's really at the bezel is 42, and you can see the bezel does not overhang the case. It's a very clean design on that aspect. The lug to lug is 47.5mm. You can see totally ground up, change up on this thing if you're paying attention at all to the previous generation to this one. Now you're also going to notice that the polished center links is a male coming off the watch instead of the female like the old one. So the lug to lug, if you count those pieces, is 50, which is the exact same measurement that you would have on the older one. So 42 by 50, if you're going to be on bracelet, that's going to be the case. So that part is really kind of the same. It's going to wear and look a little bit smaller via the case because the case is actually shorter, like I said, 47.5. Now it's also thinner, 12.7mm thick. That's including the double dome sapphire crystal with amazing anti-reflective coating on the top and bottom side of that crystal. 22mm lug width, so they widened from the 20, they widened it to the 22, which gives it a thinner profile on the lugs here. And then it also makes the taper more obvious on the bracelet because the taper is down to 18mm. So it's really obvious on this new one. And I think it looks great. So overall, I mean, spoiler alert, I think the watch looks great. 7.5mm crown. That's also an upgrade from the 6.5mm from the old one. And that's really good. It jumps it down to 300-meter water depth rating instead of the 500 on the old one. 500 was excessive, 300 is excessive, guys. But you're talking about high-end luxury divers here, so we expect certain, specifications from them, even though we don't need them. And 300 is going to be the norm. 500 was excessive, definitely, in this category. So not really worn too thin on that one. 176 gram, not sized, full bracelet. The old one with the full bracelet would be about 180, so 4 gram heavier on the old one. And the other measurement I took that could maybe be relevant is the thickness on this new clasp is 8.5mm thick versus the 6.8mm on the old one. But massive, massive upgrade on the clasp. And people are already asking me, will this one work on the other bracelet? Maybe. I'm not sure. I'll have to take some measurements. I'm definitely not going to try to swap it over, but maybe. But you can tell it's fully milled this time. And then I leave all the stickers on because this is, Saltzman's watch. It's not mine. But this center part here is going to be polished, and then it has the Breitling B and Breitling spelled out. Nice, simple double pushers. And what that does is it actually pushes these two bars together, which have these little retention nubs on them that catch on the reliefs inside this portion of it. But the big thing with this is the on-the-fly adjustment here. So you can see, and it is a massive amount of adjustment. It's like more than what one link is. Quite frankly, it's probably the most amount of adjustment I've seen on an adjustable clasp. Look how far in it goes. It goes all the way in and, of course, all the way out. So I don't know millimeter-wise or how many D10s that is, but it is a lot. It's plenty for sure. So pretty much standard affair, polished case back there. Again, this one has a sticker on it, but fairly sterile case back, at least in the center portion. Then it has some information around the outer ring. Again, all the stickers are still on this thing, but you can see it has a really nice fine brushing. It has a small polished relief along there, and then you have brushed and polished reliefs on the bezel edge. I don't know what we're calling this. It's not coin edge, but whatever the bezel edge is, the knurling here. Gone also is the little screws, the detent screws that held the tension on the bezel. That's the pretty much all the Breitlings with rotating bezels had that. This is the first time I've seen it without it. I think there are some other models without it. I just haven't handled them. This has a beautiful 120 click bezel with a ceramic insert. I mean, just listen to that. It actually sounds very close to my Submariner, but there's a little bit of play in this one. So I will have to point that out. But it sounds great and it looks great. All right, let's talk about some other design things here. Again, totally different case. It's very much more sleek and very classic in its proportions, I think, versus how the old one was a little more chunky and then obviously more cartoonish in the dial. This one's definitely a change from that. So if we zoom in a little bit, you can get a closer look at the, I don't know, a lot of people are, it's a hate it or love it watch, right? So a lot of people are not on board with that big square minute hand out on the end there. It's kind of a throwback to some vintage Breitling divers, but the square part was done on the second hand, not on the minute hand. So I'm a little confused on why they did it on the minute hand, but overall I think it kind of works. Also, the second hand kind of throws me off that there's really no balance off the backside. It just ends at the post. But I took some measurements of the hour and minute hand versus the old model, this model. When I say old model, I'm talking about this guy. And really the hands are actually really close to the same length. The minute hand, I think, or the hour hand, excuse me, is like a little bit shorter. And that's measured from the center post to the outer portion of the hand. The hands are also fully polished, and depending on what colorway you get, it might be difficult to tell time at certain angles on this one, like with this gloss black dial. It could potentially, depending on your angle like that, it sometimes will disappear a little bit. So overall, I'm going to say it's less legible than the previous one, and I don't think anyone's going to argue against that, at least for this colorway. So you have this dramatic chapter ring in here that's easy to tell the minutes, but is at a very shallow angle and takes up some of what would typically be taken up as dial space. So the dial is definitely smaller on this one, meaning that the markers are pushed more towards the center port of the dial, whereas on the old one they were pushed further out with a steep chapter ring, and then you had oversized. If you look at the indexes on this older one are just large and they go closer to the dial, so they get to about the same point in the center of the dial. They just start further back on the old one, whereas this one's just applied versus pressed into the dial. Also, no date. The caliber in this is a B17. I'm not going to open the case back, but from what I understand, it's a Breitling worked over Sellita chronometer grade, probably SW200. I think. I don't know. I can't confirm that. So take that with a grain of salt. That's not gospel for sure. That's just me guessing. So what are we looking at here? Oh, I didn't look up the price. So we'll put the information down below. I know there is a price increase, but that's to be expected anytime you have a new model. They usually take the opportunity to just go ahead and bump it up a couple $100, and I'm pretty sure that's what they did on this one. So I think with the change in the overall look, it looks more premium, it looks more classy, it looks, quite frankly, more timeless than the older generation one. I don't think anyone's going to be able to argue that. This one is not timeless. This is kind of like a hate it or love it as well scenario, right? With the date interrupting the big Arabic 3, that would maybe balance it out. But we have the winged B, and now this one's the Heritage B. So I think both of them are hate it or love it watches. They're both great watches, though. But if you want to buy brand new at an authorized dealer, I'm sure inventory, if it already hasn't been depleted in most sizes of the previous generation one, they will quickly disappear off the shelves or out of the cases. And this will be the one they're replacing it. Now, they have way more fun colors, I think. A little surprised they didn't do a yellow one, but maybe they're holding that for a limited edition release. If that's the case, I might just hold out as well and wait for that yellow one. Breitling, if you're watching this, we still want that yellow 42 millimeter, even though it's in the new one. Here it is on my 7¼ inch wrist. It wears great. It looks great, guys. It's, like I said, it's classed up. It's going to be more timeless. It's definitely still, has ties to their historical type watches and the brand. I think When I first saw the pictures, I was like, gasp, no way, it's terrible. Now that I actually have one in the metal, I actually really like it. I don't know, we'll see how it progresses. I want to see some other colors, and I want to see some more of them out there, and then I'll just reserve judgment. Does this mean I'm going to replace these guys with the new one? Absolutely not. If anything, I'm more happy that I actually picked up the orange and the white of the previous generation, just because when they're gone, they're gone. That's how watch models work, guys. We always think these things are going to be available, and then poof, they're gone, and then you're like, dang it, I missed my opportunity, and then you're relying on the secondary market, the used market, and that's not necessarily the best place to be, in my opinion. Just for kicks, here it is next to the blue Pelly. I don't know why, but I was going to do another video comparing the older BSO to the Pelly, so that's why it's sitting out. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Let me kill the lights, check the lume on this thing. It is also a different color lume than the previous one. It has a really nice cool blue to it. Super legible, no problem there. And then you can kind of see where that big square minute hand kind of comes into play. It's pretty easy to tell where that's positioned for sure. And here it is versus the previous generation. No question in my mind that the previous generation was far more legible as a time-telling watch. But the new one, timeless, very classy looking. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.